Our key markets, namely US, Canada, Europe, and Australia, accounted for 61% of our revenue during Q1 FY22, as against 69% during Q1 FY21. This shift is a result of our conscious decision to diversify our revenues in the ROW markets, as well as ramping up of supply to support the domestic market during the second wave of COVID-19. We have seen 16% year-on-year growth in revenues for the quarter. The growth was contributed from a mix of launch of new products and volume growth in existing products, including mitofungal, enoxaparin, heparin, and dexmedetomidine, among others. We had several key launches during the quarter, and it was also an important milestone for the company to launch our first set of penem products for the US market. We launched 13 molecules in the last quarter. We filed 2 ANDAs and received 6 ANDA approvals during the quarter. We also filed 5 DMFs during the same period. Our domestic market accounts for 20% of our Q1 FY22 revenue. We have seen 77% year-on-year growth in revenues for the quarter. To support the domestic market during the second wave of COVID-19, we ramped up supply of resistant drugs like remdesivir and the requirement for Indian patients. On the quality and regulatory front, all our plants continue to remain approved by US FDA. We have yet not seen physical audits being initiated, and some of our customers are conducting audits virtually during this period. Our team continues to remain prepared for any audit virtually or in person. Due to the second wave of COVID-19, the due diligence activity for M&A opportunities was impacted. We are cognizant of the current market environment and are committed to build long-term value for our stakeholders through any acquisition we may undertake. We believe we are well positioned to grow our business globally. Our board and our parent company, Fosun Pharma, continue to support us with their valuable insights on the way forward. They support us with well-defined KPIs for the business, which drives us to strive for excellence. We hope to continue delivering strong results for all our stakeholders and meet these expectations. As a company, we stand committed to support the nation battle this pandemic. I wish everyone good health. I now hand over the call to our CFO, Mr. Ravi Mitra, who will share some more insights about the financial performance for the quarter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sadu. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for attending our first quarter earnings call. Our earnings presentation has been uploaded on the website. Let me begin with sharing the financial performance of first quarter of financial year 21-22. Revenue from operations for the quarter 1 FY22 stood at rupees 11,539 million, a year-on-year increase of 31%. The growth was primarily driven by increased volume of existing portfolio and supplemented by incremental revenue from new products. During the first quarter, we have achieved good growth in the markets of Europe, India, ROW, and US. Other income for the first quarter of financial year 22 was rupees 618 million, which includes largely interest on fixed deposit of rupees 339 million and foreign exchange gains on operations of rupees 277 million. Gross contribution for quarter 1 FY22 grew by 9% as compared to quarter 1 FY21 and by 24% as compared to quarter 4 FY21. Gross contribution margin stood at 54% for the quarter. We have reported an EBITDA of rupees 4,981 million in quarter 1 FY22 and EBITDA margin of 41%. We have managed to improve the EBITDA margin in quarter 1 FY22 as compared to quarter 4 FY21 due to higher operating leverage achieved on increased capacity utilization during the period. Our net profit for the first quarter was rupees 3,507 million and PAT margin of 29%. Our operational leverage driven by increased volume enabled us to maintain PAT margin. Effective tax rate was at 25.68% for the quarter. The total R&D expense for the first quarter were rupees 438 million compared to rupees 252 million of the same period previous year financial year, which is an increase of 74% and stands at 3.8% of the revenue. Cash flow from operations for the first 3 months of the current fiscal year was rupees 1,813 million. We have built higher inventory levels considering planned launches and increased demand of our key products like enoxaparin in the coming months. Cash conversion cycle stood at 234 days for the quarter, and we have improved our receivable days and payable days compared to previous year. All our planned CapEx plans are progressing well, and we have incurred rupees 1,857 million during the quarter. As communicated in our earlier earnings call, we have earmarked rupees 5,700 million of CapEx for FY22, out of which around rupees 3,000 million will be for vaccine and biosimilar business. A separate suite for fill finish of vaccine drug product manufacturing at Pashamylaram is now ready for commercial production, and capacity building work for drug substance is on track at our new vaccine and biosimilar facility. Our ROCE on ex-cash basis stood at 42% for quarter 1 FY22, which is 7% higher than last full year FY21. Our fixed assets turnover also increased from 3.1 times in quarter 1 FY21 to 3.6 times during quarter 1 FY22 as we increased our capacity utilization. As on June 30th, 2021, we had total of rupees 30,574 million of cash, which we intend to utilize for CapEx and to fund our organic and inorganic growth strategies. With this, I would request the moderator to open the line for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now begin the question and answer session. Anyone who wishes to ask a question may press star and 1 on the touchtone telephone. If you wish to remove yourself from the question queue, you may press star and 2. Participants are requested to use handsets while asking a question. Ladies and gentlemen, we will wait for a moment while the question queue assembles. The first question is from the line of Saion Mukherjee from Nomura. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for taking my question. Good evening and congrats on a great set of numbers. Sir, my first question is regarding the ROW market, so where we have seen a step up in performance compared to what we saw in the previous quarter. Just wondering, how should we think about it going forward? Is it sustainable? Is there an element of COVID-related demand here? So if you can help us, guide for the rest of the year in this geography.
Yeah, good evening, Sayan. So the focus has been to increase this business in ROW, and with the capacity we have added, we are putting more efforts to increase that business. If you see the markets where we have entered in recent times, the COVID only helped us to get our registrations quicker than anticipated. But the product portfolio what we're selling now, not everything is COVID related. Some probably COVID related, but most of it is in a normal business where we have also won tenders for 2 or 3 years, and we have now a market entry to this new markets.
So this is sustainable, you think, this number that we have for this quarter?
Yeah, I mean, the efforts are there, at least the idea is to balance the ratio between the regulated markets and the ROW, and we're doing everything to keep that growth momentum going and have these numbers aligned with our long-term strategy.
Okay, and sir, can you update us on the China filings and any status update there?
Yeah, so like I think even in my earlier call we said we did file 6 products and 2 are closer to approval. So hopefully by the end of this year we should launch at least 1 product, and 2 more products are in the dossier making. So that will be filed in next few months. So 1 or 2 products you'll start seeing revenues by first quarter of next year.
Okay, sir. And so my last question before I join back is an update on the vaccine and the biosimilar programs. So you mentioned about partnership with Hetero. If you can elaborate on, how large is that partnership, and also on your timelines for commercial production of Sputnik on the drug substance side as well?
So on the drug substance side, we're still on track. We did mention earlier call as well. October, November is the time frame we're looking at initiating the commercial production. And with Hetero, they will be making the drug substance, and they have added our site as a finished product manufacturing site. So we can't let out the numbers, but for now they're going to get the fill finish done at our site.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, sir. I'll join back.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Sudarshan Padmanabhan from Sundaram Mutual Fund. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for taking my questions and congrats on great set of numbers. So my question is on the gross margins. I think, while you have done a phenomenal job on the top line, primarily growing on the India and the ROW, markets, our gross margin seems to be consistently under stress. So, as we grow the ROW markets, what should be the thought process on the gross margins and on the EBITDA level? You can give some color on that.
Yeah, so Sudarshan, I think we've been talking about gross margin even earlier. We are not a B2C company, so you can't relate to the gross margins of those companies. That's one. Second, the product profile and geographies where we sell, the gross margin will vary. Now, and also by increasing the volumes in ROW, we are getting that operational leverage. So what we lose at the gross margin level, 2 to 3%, we are able to make up at the EBITDA level. And that's why we're still able to maintain that 40-41% EBITDA. And we're also de-risking our business. That's one. Second, if you see last quarter, the 54% gross margin, we sold a lot of goods in Indian market, and the gross margin in India is probably around 40% level, and that kind of put a stress on that. And if you compare to last year, you need to consider the MEIS scheme is not there anymore, the 2%. And also, if you look at our R&D spend, because we also expense that out, it's part of this material. So almost 7-8 crores of materials are also expensed of this. So that's one of the reasons why the EBITDA margin is around 52% compared to our normal about 56-57%.
Sure. And with respect to the India markets, we have seen a good 77% growth, on the India side. I would understand that it has some component of remdesivir and enoxaparin, etc. From a longer term basis, what is the kind of number that we should look at specifically on India? Because we have clearly seen about 100 crore kind of a jump on a Q-on-Q basis.
Yeah, so clearly India, our normal run rate is around 60 crores, what we sell directly. That's where we have seen about 95 crores this time. So the delta of around 30 crores is the one which we got in addition to because of the COVID. But we also need to understand is there are also some pluses and minuses during COVID. We also lose some products because some of the products won't sell, the anti-infectives won't sell. So those products will degrow. So when you consider those losses and positives, the impact will be lesser. But for sure, it won't be like 35 crores domestic, but probably 25 crores at the top level. Now at the bottom level, it will be lesser because the margins are lower. These are all price controlled products, especially enoxaparin I'm referring to. And there may be probably 7-8 crores of difference what we have got because of the COVID.
And just to, take from the previous participant on the vaccine, your earlier comment was that, the second, I believe that, everybody talks about this AD26, scaling up is relatively much easier as compared to that AD5. With respect to, just to understand from an industry as well as from yourself, are we, what is the kind of issues that we are facing, or are we facing any issues, or have we kind of moved ahead in terms of, kind of scaling up the AD5? Just to give some kind of perspective from your side.
Yeah, so it's a general issue I think the RDS is facing in terms of yield to what you get out of AD5. Now, for Sputnik vaccine, you have to give both doses together. So AD26 gives you a higher yield compared to AD5. To match that, you need to take more batches, more reactors. So that's one. But they have changed processes over a period of time, and I think they're improving and they're improved now. So hopefully, they should resolve it in terms of how much yield they get. But while when people did the math, even the 80-26, the yields what they initially projected, actually those are improved now. So what we estimate probably should compensate for the yield losses at the second vector.
And this is a take or pay contract, right? So to the large extent, I mean, if we manufacture, RDIF should buy it. Is that right?
Yeah, so provided by October, we have to start our production. So there are caveats, right? So yeah, but they have to pick up this 250 million from October to end of next year.
So thanks a lot. Those were the questions from my side.
Yeah.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Shreya from Iroha. Please go ahead.
Hi, congratulations on a great set of numbers, sir, and thank you for this opportunity to ask a question. Couple of things that were on my mind. I'll ask the first one here first. The first thing was with respect to the inventory days. That has seen a growth from last year. I mean, in terms of my inventory days, it's around 276 days now in Q1 FY22 versus 178, 180 levels that were seen last year. How should we read this?
So it's more a strategic decision. Is it Ravi? Sure. So
Yes,
it's more of a strategic decision. Like you said, we are going to start supplying for enoxaparin for the US market for the largest GPO contract what our partner has from last quarter of this year. And the lead times are higher. That's one. Second, the prices are fixed for this contract, so we need to be and looking at the volatility of heparin prices. We want to have those margins intact. So we have inventorized the API required for that, and also the syringe lead times are longer. And as you know, you will have problems if you don't supply products in time, especially the GPOs. So that kind of put a pressure on the inventory days increase, but that will start going down once we start supplying from the next quarter.
Got it, sir. And secondly, my thought was on US again. In terms of growth that we saw for US, if I just leave out EU, it is around 11%. Going forward, how do you expect this to pan out?
So we still expect around 18-20% to increase. There are two factors to it, right? Last quarter, more focus was on with supplying products to Indian markets, especially the Lyos were occupied for this. And being a B2B company, we always interact with our front-end partners if they have inventory in their supply chain. We postpone the supplies to the next month, and that's what we have done. So you can't take this quarter number as a mark for the US market. But as a whole, we still estimate around 18-20% growth in the US market.
Thank you, sir. Very helpful. As investors, once you start performing in ROW, we'll ask again on US, and when you're doing well in US, we'll ask on ROW. But thank you and all the best.
Yeah, sure. No problem. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Ankush Agarwal from DPI Research. Please go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for doing my question, sir. So firstly, I want to understand a little bit on our business model, which allows us to manufacture a certain molecule of multiple partners. So my understanding is that if we have our own ANDA filing, we can basically go out and license it to multiple partners on non-exclusive basis. But in case of own partner filing, when the IP and ANDA is co-owned or know-how is co-owned, how does you make it up? How does Gland make it happen? And similarly, in case of tech transfer models, wherein the IP and know-how is owned by the partner, and we just have the manufacturing rights, how do we manufacture the same molecule multi-partners? If you can help me understand this a little better.
When it's a partner ownership filing, this is historical. When we started up this business, initial years, we were developing products, and the NDA were owned by the partners. But the development was always done by Gland. In last 3 or 4 years, we've been filing on our own. So it's more, I would say, the growth path what we took. But the process is same. It's just the ownership of ANDA belongs to them or Gland. And the second model, where the tech transfer model, the product is developed by the companies in their R&D labs, and then it gets transferred to our manufacturing sites, where we do the exhibit batches, do the method transfer, and then the product gets filed from our sites. So the product will be manufactured site, and it will be mentioned as manufactured at the Gland Pharma site, and they will go and market that product. So the product what we develop, that's the product which we can give it exclusive or non-exclusive depending on the type of contract. Whichever product we're getting tech transfer to our site, they have the right to go and sell the product. That's the only way.
Yeah, so in case of tech transfer model, we are not allowed to manufacture the same molecule for different person because the know-how is borrowed from the another party, right?
Yeah, with their IP, with their development data, we can't make it to anybody else.
Yes, got it. So on the similar line, since we work largely on like non-exclusive basis or say on the transfer pricing model, I believe our profit share would be quite low, right? So it can highlight the broad range of profit share that we have, like 10%, 15%, or whatever range it can be.
So it all depends on the time of the profit, right? So when you launch a product, the profits are higher. The percentage of profit ranges from 40 to 50% whenever you license the product, maybe rarely 30% product, depending on the type of product. But the profit share is always range from 40 or 50%.
Even with the transfer pricing.
Pardon?
Even with the transfer pricing built in, we still have 40-50% kind of profit share.
Yeah. Transfer price, transfer price is an inclusion of cost of goods plus the conversion cost and some margin over it. And then you sell the product you transfer the product to the partner, and they'll go and sell the product in the market.
Right.
So whatever profit they make over the transfer price, that is shared.
Right. No, what I was coming from is basically the typical arrangements are 50-50% profit sharing, but the manufacturer provides the product at cost, right? And then you get 50-50% profit sharing. Gland's ability to maintain,
Yeah, no, it's not at cost because still we have the job or manufacturing overheads, and also we also take risks, right? I mean, for a period of time. So there will be a margin in the transfer price also.
Right. So finally, just one last one. If you can help me understand a little bit on what kind of addressable opportunity is there for Gland in the US market. And the small generic injectable market is around $11 billion, but I believe for us the addressable market will be slightly lower given that we are not present on the complex injectables in a big way, and we don't address a lot of complex delivery systems. So at the moment, what kind of addressable opportunity is there in the US?
So the US market, if you see total generic injectables is almost 45 billion.
But that will be biologics as well, right?
Yeah. So if you remove that, then it will be around 35 billion. And if you see our ANDAs, what we have already developed and approved, it's around 11 billion. And we have filed and to be approved around $3.5 billion. So if you consider everything around 14 billion already we have filed or tentatively approved. And then we have a pipeline of products and if you see next 5 years, another $13 billion products are going off patent. Out of this complex will be around 5 billion. So around 7 billion is still there in the normal injectables and about 5 billion in the complex. So we're also working on the complex right now.
Right. So you don't see any challenge for Gland to grow in the US business even at a high base?
We still have time because still, see how we are looking at it, especially in our model, the products, whatever we launch, that's not the end of the day because even those products are growing for us because being the B2B, we are in B2B space, the companies are already selling the same product in the market. They actually move those products to our side because of the cost advantage we give them. So it's not that whatever launched by us, for example, our product is competing with another product in the market. That competitor might come to me and ask to manufacture because we give a better price structure to them.
Got it. Okay. That was very helpful. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Nitya Balasubramanian from Bernstein. Please go ahead.
Hi, thank you. So, just a quick clarification on the profit share comment that you made, Sadhu. So, just to be clear, your typical deal would look like transfer pricing plus a margin, plus 40 to 50% of the net profit of your customers. Is that right?
That's correct.
But I think one of the earlier calls you had also mentioned that if Gland is making 100 rupees in total, approximately 75 to 80% actually comes from transfer pricing and a much smaller portion comes from profit share. Is that understanding still correct with these numbers?
Yeah, that's still correct. Yeah, especially products where it has become more generic, that stands correct. But whenever you launch a big product, initial base, they'll also get a good chunk of profit. So, but in the long run, that's correct.
Okay, understood. So a quick question on R&D expenses, since it's obviously increased quite a bit compared to Q1 as well as Q4. So just wanted some color on, is this an indication of increased filing activity, or is this because of some complex products hitting the clinic? If you can throw a bit more light on R&D.
Yeah, so normally our first 2 quarters are go for more of the exhibit batches because we want to file by end of the year. So we have taken almost 13 ANDA exhibit batches in this quarter, and I think that's what the spend is. You have seen that it's a mix of a few complex products, I would say, couple of complex and the rest generic products.
So for the complex products, it's just a bunching up of exhibit batches in this quarter, so it might not be at the same level going forward.
Yeah, no. So we'll still maintain that the 3.4% of revenue as our R&D expense for the year.
Got it. One last one on biosimilars. So I think you had mentioned in earlier calls that your intention is to repurpose the vaccine manufacturing facility to contract manufacturing of biosimilars. Is there any progress on that front that you can share with us?
Yeah, so we are having a strategic discussion with the Henlius, the subsidiary of Fosun on this line. So we are having continuous discussions on that. So hopefully, something should work out soon.
So Shanghai Henlius, if you look at their presentation, they've talked about second plant, which they're right now going to commission. They have a third plant, which is already planned and announced. So how does Gland's capacities and capabilities fit into the mix?
Yeah, so while they are into their own development, if you see the pipeline, what they have, current and the newer, there's a whole lot of pipeline which they are looking to expand into capacity. They still don't have enough capacity. That's one. Second, looking at their development capabilities, a lot of companies are approaching them for the CDMO activities, which currently they're not doing. I think that's where we will play a role. That's how the discussions are happening.
Would you also be targeting the ROW opportunity or primarily developed markets opportunity for biosimilars?
No, ROW as well. So the primary reason also is getting manufactured in India and supplied to the Asian and ROW markets. That is the easier way because of the regulatory experience we have in managing these countries. So that's one of the advantages what we have.
Understood. Thank you so much and all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Tushar Manudhane from Motilal Oswal Financial Services. Please go ahead.
Yeah, congrats on great set of numbers. Just on the vaccine front, out of 300 crores which you have lined up for vaccine, how much you would have spent already?
Yeah, for this quarter we spent about 121 crores. Balance is going to be spent in the next few months.
Okay. And broadly, what kind of basis you are experiencing to vaccines and then further delving into biosimilars? Broadly, what kind of effect time can be expected from these investments?
The return you asked?
Asset turn.
Okay. Asset turn, we are going to maintain the similar kind of asset turn over a company basis.
So around 2.5, 2.6 times.
No, intention will always to maintain our asset turn. The asset turn that we have reported is 3.6. So we will try to maintain that.
Sorry, your voice was not clear. If you could just repeat.
Yeah, Tushar, so in the current quarter, we maintained 3.6x of fixed asset turnover.
Okay.
And on the company level, we are going to maintain similar kind of asset turn.
All right. Thanks. That's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Bharat Celly from Equirus Securities. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for the opportunity and congrats for great set of numbers. So, just wanted to clarify on the profit share part. So, just wanted to understand what portion of our current revenue will be coming as a profit share, and what will be the base for the cost plus margin business. So, if you could give that split, will be helpful.
Yeah, about 8% of revenue is coming from profit share.
Okay, it is 8%. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. And sir, just wanted to understand on the ROW business. So what has happened over the last couple of quarters that we have seen this immense growth? Obviously, we would have got into the new geographies, but how the overall approval trajectory has been, if you could throw some light on that.
Yes, so last year, if you see our new plant, we have added a lot of capacities in last 2 years. So that gave us leverage to exploit that business. So always been ways to get our maximum revenues and profits. With our capacity limitations, we are putting a lot of effort on the US. That's what we are focusing on. But what we have seen is, of course, one is we have to de-risk our business. And there's also a lot of opportunity out in other markets for specific products. So the portfolio what we have created in last few years, because we can't take every product to ROW markets because of the margins. So we've selected the portfolio and tried to drive those portfolio into these markets, and we had those products got registered. Now during COVID, these products were already at the file stage, and because of the emergency requirement of some other products. So we got our plans approved quicker than anticipated. So probably I would say, this COVID has accelerated by a year our entries, ROW, and the way we are growing. So especially markets like Saudi Arabia, Israel, these are the markets which we are anticipating a year or even a year later. That's what accelerated.
Sure, that's helpful. I will get back to the queue. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Tarang from Old Bridge Capital. Please go ahead.
Hello. Hi, good evening, team. I have 2 questions from my side. Sir, just wanted to understand what attributes are, driving your growth in India and ROW markets. I mean, is it lack of suppliers or, is it your cost? What is it? If you were to list down a couple of attributes. And, when I look at your overall revenue share, how do you see the share from these 2 markets growing over the medium term, say in the next 2 to 3 years? That's my first question. And the second question, would an fixed asset turn range of 3.5 to 3.7 and ROIC of north of 40%, would that be optimum utilization from your standpoint, or we can see some improvement in your fixed asset turns from here on as well?
Okay, so I'll address the first point and then Mr. Ravi will address the second one. From the ROW and Indian business perspective, it's a combination of the portfolio what we are selecting to this market because some of the products what we have filed and got approved and start selling in US, we are leveraging that. Second, several of these products are backward integrated, so we have that advantage in terms of volumes, and of course, the capacity utilization we have with the volumes that are selling in the US, we have that advantage as well. So we have a cost advantage as well as the development advantage what we're making use of from the US. From the share perspective, I think probably in a year or so, US might be 50-55%, and the rest of the world could be 45%. We are, of course, this is like we have to look quarter on quarter and see how the margins are looking like in the US and how the margins are looking at in the other markets. But China is a special market for us moving forward because the margin profile what we're anticipating, and also the complex side of business in the US, and some of the 505(b)(2)s and what we have filed and what we're going to file in the future. So we have to manage. There is no. If you asked me 2 years ago, probably I was told US probably 70-75%. But the way the market dynamics is working, it's a bit more reasonable now in the ROW business as well for some of the molecules which we are trying to expand ourselves, and also the regulatory framework and all that. I think it's also a de-risking strategy, especially under COVID, different countries getting impacted in different ways. That's one of the reasons we started expanding this business across geographies now.
Yeah. So on your questions on fixed assets turn and ROE, so considering the capex growth plan what we have, we are adding new lines at Pashamylaram, which will help us to meet the volume demand for the next 3-4 years after the cycle is over. And similarly, we are backward integration. We are adding new capacity in our Vizag API facility. All put together, after we spend this year and next year's capex, we should be good for next 3, 4, 5 years growth plan. So considering all that, we end up definitely 3 to 3.5x of fixed asset turn in near term. On the ROE, if you see on Excaft, we are 40% plus. And any investment which we are doing currently also, we look at internal IRR of at least 20%, which is on overall ROC which we have. So going forward, any investment we are doing either on capex or in organic, we will maintain that similar kind of ROC.
Sure. So 3.5 to 3 point. I mean, you like Q1, you did about 3.6. So that's a optimum utilization if I were to conclude.
Currently, our Lyo are 80% utilized already.
Okay.
And with the new capex and new lines which we have mentioned just now, we'll be able to meet the increasing demand of next 2 years. So with the capex of 300 this year and 250 next year, we'll be complete on our organic capex cycle. That should give a similar kind of asset turn return.
Got it. Thank you. All the best.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Alisha Mahawla from Envision Capital. Please go ahead.
Hi, sir. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity. Sir, firstly, I'd just like to understand the supply for the fill finish to Hetero. When is that expected to start from?
So we have just taken the trial batch last week, and it's a regulatory process. So I think the plan is to start from September, but ultimately it's the timing they have to decide. But I think hopefully it should start in September.
So maybe H2 of this year, sub-9. Okay.
Yeah.
And sir, the second thing I'd like to understand is that while you were mentioning even to an earlier participant that incrementally the contribution from India and rest of the world is expected to move slightly higher. In light of that, where do we expect our margins to eventually be on a more sustainable basis? Currently we're at about 40-41% EBITDA margins. Will these be sustainable, or do you expect them to be somewhere marginally lower than 40%? Just maybe 3-4 years down the line, what would be a sustainable number?
I think on an annual basis, we still estimate around 40%. So some few quarters a bit higher, a few quarters a little less, but on average, our target is to get to that 40% EBITDA margin. because we get that operation leverage kicking in after a certain unit.
Understood. And so the last thing I'd like to, I actually missed this number. What did you say would be a sustainable run rate for the India business, excluding the COVID impact, that the COVID boost that we got this quarter?
So as a company level, we look at 40%.
40%.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
EBITDA margin. Yeah.
No, I'm talking about the run rate or the growth. You mentioned that number earlier, but I missed it.
Give me a second.
Yeah.
About 60-65 crores a quarter.
Okay, sir. And that is a normal run rate we expect to maintain, even in light of the new products that we're looking to launch.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Ashish Thavkar from Motilal Oswal Asset Management. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. So we have taken a fill and finish for Hetero. So are we also expecting another potential opportunities with some of the MNCs?
Some of the?
Some of the other companies as such for other mRNA vaccines?
Yeah, if the opportunity comes, we will take it. Just that it has to come. So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So broadly over the next 2 years, you said you will be having a capex plan of around 800 crores. So where are we in terms of steroid and hormonal APIs, and also if you could throw some light on long-acting injectables?
So we have about not on the API side, on the finished product side. We are working around 14 complex products, including steroids, hormones, and LAIs. About 4 products will be filed by end of next year, a couple this year, and another 3 products next year. So there's another 25-30 products to be worked on in the next few years. But as of now, it's 14 products which are started working on.
Okay. And these are all our own ANDAs or these are partnered ones?
We see now we are not giving the products to partners to own it. It will be our own, but of course everything will be sold to partners.
Okay. And just lastly to clarify, the commercial production timelines for Sputnik remains around November, October, and we are confident that these timelines will be met, right?
Yeah. So the plan is to start around October, November, the vaccine. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. This is very good. Thank you and all the best.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Nitesh from Nippon India. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Can you help us understand how is the vaccine capacity shaped up at a global level? What are your thoughts? Would there be overcapacity in coming 6 months to 1 year? And would this be a commoditized space kind of a thing?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question?
How the vaccine manufacturing capacity has shaped up in terms of the announcements which has come from the tie-ups which global players have done with each of the local geography. What's your take on that? Would there be overcapacity in coming 6 months to 12 months, and would this become a commoditized space kind of a thing in year 2 kind of thing?
So our pricing is fixed with RDIF. So and that's one. Second, this supplies what we're talking about is not just Indian market; it's for the global market. And if you see the demand, what they're estimating is over 11 billion vaccines is the demand in next 9 months to 1 year. So I think there's enough demand if people can supply.
Okay. And your pricing is fixed, and is it like pay or take kind of agreement, or that's not the case because it's a government kind of a thing, you can't enforce on them?
Yeah, so we have to successfully get the technology transfer done, and then we have to supply from October of this year to end of next year, and they have a commitment to take it to 50 million.
And going forward after this commitment, like on a year 2 or maybe year 3, you think the pricing for this kind of contracts will drop dramatically given the kind of capacity addition which has come globally or going to come globally?
I mean, we can't really comment at this stage. It all depends on, at that point of time, how much actually is available and what's the cost of other vaccines. So I don't think I can comment on that because, like I said, we are not the ones who are selling the product at the end market. We're only manufacturing for them.
Okay. Yeah, that's it from my side.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Kunal from Valum India Discovery Fund. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I wanted to understand firstly, could you please throw some light in terms of the drug substance manufacturing for the COVID Sputnik vaccine? I mean, what are the challenges, in terms of the supply chain and the manufacturing complexity? And yeah, that's my first question.
Yeah, so I've already told about this. The technology transfer is done for the first. Second is happening now in terms of technical batches. The yields is the concern people have raised. They're not reached that stage yet, but the technical folks from RDF have worked on the processes. They've improved the processes and over the last few months, and hopefully, the scale up and yield should improve.
Got it, sir. And I wanted to understand, secondly, on the business model itself. I mean, I wanted to understand a certain portion of your revenues in the US market. I mean, they come from filings where the customer owns the IP. Although Gland has invested in the development of the IP, but the customer mainly owns the IP, and we supply that specific product to that specific customer only. So, if I'm not wrong, I think that portion, that piece would be around 30-35% of the US business. So, wanted to understand how do you hedge the risk there? Because when it comes to supplying to a single customer rather than a bunch of customers, so how do you hedge the risk there? Because then in that specific segment, it is our exposure is as good as any other company which is marketing on its own and has its own filing. So it has a risk of your pricing and your market share being eroded. So how do you hedge up against that piece of the business?
So, one is I didn't completely understood your question. So the partner who's selling this product, whether he owns the IP or we own the IP, he'll not sell to one customer, right? He'll sell to the entire market. Whoever the GPOs are there, whoever the hospital networks are there, he'll be like any other company. He'll be supplying. Why only one customer?
No, sir. So there is a specific portion where you supply where you supply only to a specific customer just because you have an agreement with that customer and the customer owns the ANDA and you don't have an ANDA. So you end up working with that specific customer itself, and then you end up
So wherever we have exclusive agreements, we also have clauses where there has to be a minimum market share requirement. If they don't achieve those market share requirements, then it will become non-exclusive, and we can go and offer it to some other partners.
Got it. I think that is what I was seeking for. And just last question from my end, I wanted to understand. I mean, are there any plans of increasing the R&D spend as a percentage of revenue? Because so that's to cater to more complex filings, which are lined up for the next 5 years.
No, so based on our pipeline and products and the expenditures, I think we're good to go with 3.5-4% of revenue as an R&D expenditure. Because our partners also pitch in with the IP, the legal, and also the bio study expenses.
So that's not included in our R&D spend, and that's why probably it looks a little lower compared to other companies.
Got it. Got it. That's very helpful, and all the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Vishal from Nirmal Bang. Please go ahead.
Thanks for the opportunity. So my question pertains to China market. So the 6 filings that you have there, could you talk about the market size of those 6 filings currently?
It's about $550 million.
Pardon, sir?
$550 million.
Okay. All these 6 filings cumulatively represent $560 million in sales.
That's correct.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, this was the last question for today. I would now like to hand the conference over to Mrs. Sumanta Bajpayee for closing comments.
I once again thank everyone for joining us today for our first quarter earnings call. If there's any question that still remain unanswered, or if you want any further clarification, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Good night and see you later.
Thank you.
Thank you. On behalf of Gland Pharma Limited, that concludes this conference. Thank you for joining us,